Hey guys, today we sail straight into the sun-baked Caribbean around the year 1704, where your boots are damp, your shirt sticks to your back, and your bunk smells vaguely of pickled fish and spilled rum. You're not a captain, not yet anyway. You're the newest crew member aboard a notorious pirate vessel named the Fancy, and you're about to discover that life on the high seas isn't just about swashbuckling sword fights and dramatic cannon battles. No, it's also about scheduled lunch breaks and extremely well-attended committee meetings. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And hey, if you're listening while drifting off, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you all tune in. Now, relax, maybe put on some soft music, and let's get started on today's journey together. The deck creaks beneath your feet as you take your first uncertain steps aboard the Fancy. The sky is a pure, blinding blue, the sails ripple like the wings of some massive sea creature, and the Captain Thomas II greets you not with a sword pointed at your throat but with a mildly sarcastic "You can cook, right?" Apparently, aboard this pirate ship, roles are assigned less by threats and more by committee vote. You didn't see that coming, did you? You're handed a crew chart scrawled with names and tasks. Look closer and you realize that these pirates have organized their labor like a makeshift labor union. There's even a break rotation, and someone is in charge of snack inventory, which consists mostly of hardtack and the occasional stolen citrus. Someone has penciled in coconut slicing workshop on Thursday. This is not the pirate life Hollywood promised you. Still, things are, oddly efficient. You soon learn that the Fancy operates on what the crew calls the Articles of Agreement, a code of conduct that's democratic, binding, and reviewed every other full moon unless a storm interferes. Everyone gets a vote, from the grizzled quartermaster to the kid who's still figuring out how to tie knots without tying himself to the mast. And unlike in most navies, your vote actually matters. 2. The captain is more like an elected CEO. If he makes decisions the crew doesn't like, they can vote to depose him. There's even a grievance box, although it's just a hollowed-out turtle shell hanging by the latrine. According to that one guy who swears he used to be a lawyer in London, this is all perfectly legitimate, if not in the eyes of British law, then at least among pirates. Even the plunder is split democratically. After a successful raid, say, on a French merchant vessel carrying a suspicious number of silver spoons and preserved pears, the loot is divided fairly. The captain and quartermaster get larger shares, sure, but everyone else gets a piece, including the guy who sleeps in the hammock above the cannon pile and talks in his sleep about turnips. You wonder, why haven't more ships done it this way? Scholars still debate whether these pirate democracies were born of noble ideology or sheer practicality. Maybe when you've been whipped for stealing bread back in England, the idea of fairness at sea becomes sacred. Or maybe it's just easier to keep morale high when people feel heard even when they smell like old onions and seaweed. You spend your days patching sails, mopping decks, and learning not to insult the ship's parrot, who once bit off a sailor's earlobe and has since been regarded as a respected voting member of the crew. His name is Charles. He votes aye on everything. Evenings bring a strange kind of calm. With lanterns flickering, you sit in a circle while someone with questionable musical talent strums a cracked lute and sings songs about freedom, revenge, and rum shortages. Sometimes they argue over whether bananas count as currency. Sometimes, they just nap in the rigging and let the wind decide the ship's direction. Despite the occasional storm or sea monster, rumor definitely saw it, had 3 glowing eyes and a moral compass, you start to find the rhythm comforting. You sleep well. You even laugh, once, when someone steals your ration of raisins and replaces it with a note that says, "Eat fewer raisins, start a coup." You're now part of something that feels more like a floating village than a band of criminals. You share stories, patch each other up after minor scuffles, and even hold weekly debates. This week's topic: whether tying flags upside down sends the wrong message to merchant ships. And yes, you learn about the legendary lunch breaks. Right at noon, regardless of winds or whale sightings, the ship drops anchor or slows course, and the crew gathers for a meal. It's often simple beans, salted meat, or something that might once have been bread, but it's shared with a kind of reverence. Someone reads aloud from a battered book of Norse myths, another tells the same joke about a Spanish goat and a barrel that no one quite understands, but everyone laughs at anyway. This democratic pirate experiment, as odd as it sounds, has historical roots. There really were pirate crews in the 17th and 18th centuries who rejected traditional hierarchy. Some historians link these practices to sailors who'd fled naval abuse or indentured servitude, creating micro-societies with their own justice, honor, and even healthcare plans, if you can call extra grog and a clean bandage a plan. One of the quirkiest rules aboard the Fancy? You're fined if you bring livestock into your hammock without asking. Apparently, this came up after a crew member attempted to raise a chicken for fresh eggs. The chicken disagreed. You're slowly starting to feel like part of a strange, floating commune, one where the music is off-key, the food is salty, and everyone has a mild sunburn, but no one's shouting orders or dangling you off the mast for amusement. It's anarchic, sure, but there's a curious kind of order in the chaos. And so you drift into the rhythm of life at sea, where the winds blow freely and democracy smells faintly of boiled cabbage. For now, the water's calm. But like any democracy, things only stay peaceful until someone wants a bigger slice of the pie. The day you learn how fragile pirate democracy really is, the sun hangs heavy and low, and your hammock won't stop swaying, even though the ship is still. The Fancy has just returned from a successful raid, and the deck is littered with crates of tobacco, bolts of bright fabric, and the occasional cursed-looking trinket no one wants to touch. Spirits are high. There's already talk of extending lunch breaks to 2 hours. Someone proposes siesta privileges with full hammocking rights. Charles the parrot squawks approvingly. Then the quartermaster brings out the ledger. Now, this isn't just any old book. It's a thick, leather-bound thing, wrapped in oilskin and sealed with a braided string of old hair whose hair no one dares ask. Inside, the official tally of spoils, votes, punishments, and crew agreements. Every member of the crew signs off on its contents, including you, with your wobbly signature that sort of resembles a jellyfish. The moment the quartermaster reads out the loot shares, you feel the wind shift. Captain 2 gets 5 shares, he says. Quartermaster gets 4. Gunners, 2. Everyone else, 1. Someone coughs. Someone else mutters something unprintable about rum math. A big man known only as Stumpy, with both legs fully intact, confusingly stands up. That's not what we agreed last moon, he growls. We said 3 shares for the captain. A murmur ripples through the crew like a rogue wave. You glance around. A few nod. One guy scratches his beard and says, I think we voted on 2.5 but forgot to update the ledger. Charles shrieks, mutiny, which doesn't help. So the meeting begins. There are no gavels or powdered wigs, just a chipped tin mug passed around to indicate whose turn it is to speak. Democracy, pirate style. You hold your breath. You'd heard stories about this, how one false tally could sink a whole crew into chaos. Here's where things get even weirder. There's a crew member named Lettuce. No one knows why. Lettuce is the ship's unofficial mediator and takes the tin mug solemnly. I propose a revote, they declare. Retroactive to the day after the full moon, but excluding the raid on the Portuguese schooner because that was technically unsanctioned. Heads nod. Charles squawks something that sounds like "I." What unfolds is a mix of parliamentary procedure and absolute mayhem. People shout dates. Someone starts drawing diagrams in the spilled tobacco. Someone else begins carving what looks like a pie chart into the deck with a spoon. It turns out that pirate democracy isn't about efficiency, it's about catharsis. Every grievance, big or small, gets aired. A gunner complains he hasn't been rotated off laundry duty in 6 weeks. A cook accuses another cook of hoarding nutmeg. The parrot throws up on someone's boot. Yet somehow, after an hour of chaos and coconut tossing, a new vote is held. This time, the captain graciously accepts 3.5 shares, the crew gets a small bonus, and the quartermaster agrees to organize loot audits every fortnight. There's even a motion passed to rename the ledger the Book of Balanced Booty, which is absolutely voted in. So, yes, democracy survives. Barely. But you notice a change in the air afterward. People start whispering more. Some nod in private corners. A barrel of musket balls is found in someone's hammock. Nobody says anything. It's around this time you learn the real reason pirate ships like the Fancy had these systems in place: survival. The high seas were lawless, yes, but pirates had codes not because they were idealists, but because without them, everything fell apart. You can't sail a ship with 20 swordsmen and no agreements. Even chaos needs rules. That's a mainstream historical fact for you. Pirate codes, real documents like Black Bart Roberts' articles, laid out systems for loot division, injury compensation, 800 silver for a lost arm, and even curfews. These weren't romantic pirates, they were proto-unionists with sabers. It's the open secret of piracy, they were more organized than the navies chasing them. But not everything was tidy. You overhear a whispered conversation between two younger sailors about a plan to adjust the next vote. There's talk of bribing Charles with biscuits. You laugh until you realize they're serious. One night, while stargazing near the prow, Lettuce sits beside you. They smell faintly of lemons and lamp oil. You think we're a proper democracy, huh? They ask, squinting at the sky. It's more like organized compromise. Until someone brings a cannon to the table. You don't know what to say. Maybe they're right. You remember that open scholarly debate you overheard once from a passing academic who'd paid for passage in tea, whether pirate democracies were stable systems or just temporary islands of order in a stormy sea of desperation. He'd used words like intentional anarchy and resource-led egalitarianism before throwing up overboard. But whether by desperation or design, the system works mostly. The grievances quiet down. Lunch breaks resume. Someone invents a flag folding contest. You get promoted to rope supervisor, which mostly means yelling that one, when a knot gets stuck. You're proud anyway. Until one morning, the captain doesn't come up on deck. It starts subtly. A quiet absence. Then murmurs. Then the quartermaster reads a note: "Gone for a walk, don't wait up." Just like that, Captain 2 has abandoned ship. The crew reacts like someone spilled grog on a map, panicked, loud, and slightly fermented. You're called into a snap vote. New leader or interim council. Someone suggests Charles as captain, and while technically legal, no one wants to be ordered around by a bird again. So they elect a rotating council of 5. You're not on it, thank the stars, but Lettuce is. You watch as this bizarre new form of ship government emerges, 5 co-captains, each with one area of command. navigation, supplies, defense, morale, and other. Democracy 2.0. It lasts 3 days. Turns out, multiple captains equals multiple opinions. Arguments erupt. The ship goes in circles. Lunch breaks stretch into dinner. Someone sails you straight into a patch of seaweed so thick it looks like the ocean grew a beard. In the end, a single captain is re-elected Stumpy, of all people, who runs on a platform of no nonsense, more raisins. He wins in a landslide. His first decree? A full crew nap day. And so pirate democracy limps on, bruised but alive, held together by votes, jokes, and a lot of rope. You wake to a smell you can't quite place. It's somewhere between seaweed stew and sweaty leather, with just a whiff of something ceremonial. On deck, the crew gathers in a circle, whispering as if expecting divine revelation or at least a mildly inspiring speech. At the center, Stumpy, new captain, former grievance yeller, current wearer of a suspiciously majestic cloak made from stitched-together sails and at least one curtain. He raises his arms. Today, he says, we codify our democracy. A cheer goes up. Then silence. Then someone yells, what's codify mean, and someone else throws a stale biscuit at them. You adjust your sash and squint at the sun, which feels hotter than usual as if even it isn't sure what this meeting's about. Turns out, today's about setting the rules of lunch. You see, ever since the crew voted to lengthen midday rest, arguments have broken out: who eats first, who scrapes the pots, whether dessert is a basic right or a luxury. You once watched two gunners nearly duel over a pear. So Stumpy's idea is to write down everything: who eats when, who cleans what, and how long naps can reasonably last before it turns into mutiny by oversleeping. This all sounds absurd, until Lettuce steps in, holding a scroll that's apparently been salvaged from a merchant ship and scribbled over with charcoal notes. It's a charter, they explain. A formal document. Other crews have tried it. Black Sam Bellamy's men had one, and Calico Jack's crew nearly passed one before they, exploded. So now you're part of a full-blown constitutional convention. On a ship. In the Caribbean. With parrots. The charter writing process is as democratic as it is excruciating. Every decision requires a vote. Each vote needs a debate. Each debate devolves into an argument about whether onions belong in stew. You get 15 separate motions in the first hour. The scroll is passed around, each crew member contributing to what will become the articles of the fancy, a glorious mess of scribbles, crossed out jokes, and at least one doodle of a very muscular octopus labeled justice. Still, something remarkable happens. The rules begin to take shape. Clause 1, loot is divided by effort, not title. Unless it's shiny. Then a shininess committee decides. Clause 2, meals are rotated by crew order, with cooks eating last, except on Sundays. Clause 3, no dueling before breakfast. Clause 4, any parrot elected to office must serve only as ceremonial mascot. People laugh. People argue. But mostly, people feel heard. It might sound silly, but you feel a tug in your chest watching this unfold. This ragtag group of outlaws and outcasts is doing something bigger than just surviving. They're trying to build fairness. On a floating wooden fortress with a leaky cannon deck and a flag that looks like someone spilled wine on a skeleton sketch. Of course, no system is perfect. The Shininess Committee collapses within 2 days due to internal glitter disputes. One member insists that emeralds don't sparkle as much as polished copper, and you quietly suspect they've never seen an emerald in their life. There's a brief experiment with a talking stick to regulate debates, but someone throws it overboard during a disagreement about pickles. Still, the charter holds. Morale improves. Lunches become orderly. Someone invents a pudding rating scale. Stumpy even initiates Feedback Fridays, where grievances are read aloud and immediately acted on or ridiculed, depending on mood. You might be thinking this is all a bit much. But consider this: historically, pirate charters were detailed. Some even included rules for how to behave on land, penalties for theft, and compensation for injuries. The most famous, Bartholomew Roberts articles, included a ban on gambling and enforced lights-out times. Pirates may have been wild, but their ships ran with a logic as strict as any navy, perhaps stricter. Here's a quirky tidbit: one crew, it's said, actually had rules about musical performances. Bad playing could get you banned from post-dinner concerts. On the fancy, someone tries implementing this, but unfortunately the enforcer is tone-deaf and bans only the good players. Still, not everyone loves the new order. You overhear two senior sailors, let's call them Flint and Grizzle, complaining that things were better when chaos ruled. They miss the unpredictability, the bloodthirsty raids, the unstructured naps. Democracy, says Grizzle, spitting overboard, is just tyranny with more paperwork. You try to ignore them. But then a small fire breaks out near the powder room, an accident, officially. A hammock is cut loose and tossed overboard in the night. Supplies go missing. And then the boat starts swinging. It's subtle at first. A cook who never speaks suddenly wins 3 consecutive votes. One man always seems to be holding the tin mug, even when votes aren't called. The parrot stops squawking "I" and starts saying "no confidence." Turns out, someone's trying to rig the democracy. You confront Lettuce, who sits under the mainsail with a worried look. They're buying votes, they whisper. With favors. Promises. Even extra rations. The charter's a game to them now. You feel the weight of it settle in your gut. The idealism that made you believe pirates could govern themselves fading. You remember that open scholarly debate you once eavesdropped on in port: did pirate democracy last because of collective principles, or was it just a clever way to keep the crew from killing each other until they reached land? Maybe both. But as the sun sets, the crew assembles again, this time for an emergency vote. A proposal is made to revise the charter. Remove a few protections. Centralize authority. No one says coup, but it's in the air, floating like the smell of wet gunpowder and regret. You stand up. You've never spoken in front of the full crew before. The tin mug shakes in your hand. You talk about fairness. About why you joined. About how you once stole a biscuit and no one flogged you, they gave you 2 more and said, "Eat before you steal, dummy." You finish. Silence. Then Lettuce claps. Then someone else. Then Charles screeches, "Democracy." The vote? It holds. The charter stays. The corrupt vote buyers lose. Flint and Grizzle get reassigned to hull cleaning duty, which is pirate punishment code for think about your life choices. That night, you and Lettuce share rum under the stars. We're not perfect, they murmur, but we try. That's more than most. And you believe it? For now. The winds have shifted. You can feel it not just in the sails but in the air between people. Tension's still there, like a rope pulled taut, but something about surviving a near coup with pudding charts intact seems to have bonded the crew in ways no raid ever could. There's more laughter at mealtimes, fewer knives under pillows. You catch Stumpy smiling at sunsets like he thinks he invented peace. It's almost boring. Until someone spots a flag on the horizon. You squint through a spyglass and feel your stomach sink. It's Navy. Royal Navy. A British man of war, all cannons and crisp lines, bearing down on you like a slow-moving thundercloud. You remember, suddenly, that this utopia you're floating on is technically illegal. And very sinkable. There's a scramble. Shouts. Orders. You're half laughing because of course the only real threat to democracy was always going to be bureaucracy in a uniform. Stumpy gathers the officers. Lettuce brings the charter. We vote, they say. Fight or run. Now, here's the historical fact to chew on while everyone panics. Some pirate ships did vote on whether or not to engage with incoming ships, even during battle. Pirate captains held their power only at the crew's discretion, and a ship's course literally and figuratively was always a matter of consensus. That's the deal. Want the loot? Earn the trust. So the crew votes. It's close. One guy only votes fight because he's halfway through sharpening a harpoon and doesn't want to waste the momentum. But in the end, it's run. Democratic, and frankly, wise. Except you can't run fast enough. The man of war is gaining. Your ship creaks and groans, but you're no match for naval efficiency. And then, at the most inconvenient moment possible, your rudder jams. You spin like a drunk crab. Someone starts praying. Someone else throws up. The cannon fire doesn't come immediately. Instead, a smaller vessel detaches and approaches a boarding party. Red coats, white wigs, and smug faces. They climb aboard like they're here for afternoon tea, not to dismantle your dreams. And that's when Lettuce steps forward, waving the charter. You watch in awe as they speak not as a pirate, but as a representative of a sovereign collective. We are an autonomous vessel operating under elected leadership, they say. Our articles are transparent. Our governance is democratic. We request recognition, not conflict. The Navy officer, a man with a jaw so square it could open cans, snorts. You're pirates. We're voters, Lettuce replies. Armed ones. This might be your favorite moment of all time. What follows is a weird standoff, half hostage negotiation, half debate club. The Navy inspects the ship, reading your doodled constitution with mild horror. You offer them lunch, which they refuse, though one of them pockets a pudding. Arguments flare. At one point, someone mentions the Magna Carta and nearly starts a fist fight. And then something strange happens, they leave. No cannon fire. No arrests. Just a warning and a record in their ledger. Maybe it's your organization that saves you. Maybe it's sheer confusion. Or maybe some officer with half a brain realizes that blowing up a ship that self-governs and hosts Feedback Fridays would look terrible in court. Once they're gone, the crew explodes into cheers. Rum is passed, hammocks are hung, and someone even bakes a celebratory pie using dubious ingredients and a prayer. You survived. Again. But the incident shifts something deeper. A new idea is floating among the crew, not about loot, or pudding rights, but about recognition. What if you weren't just surviving? What if your ship became a model? Not just a pirate democracy, but the pirate democracy. A place where sailors came not to plunder, but to join a cause. An example for others drifting in lawless waters. Of course, there's immediate backlash. Some say you're going soft. Others mutter that you can't keep a reputation if you keep turning down good old-fashioned pillaging. And one guy, who refuses to use utensils, starts drawing skulls on every surface to remind people you're still mean. So Stumpy proposes a compromise: the crew will hold a constitutional congress at sea. You almost laugh. Then you realize they're serious. Within days, other ships arrive, curious allies, old frenemies, even one merchant ship that accidentally gets involved and then refuses to leave. They circle you like curious dolphins around a very loud, very self-important whale. Delegates are chosen. Votes are counted. Someone insists on fancy paper and tries to fold origami swans instead of ballots. And yes, there are arguments. One ship wants corporal punishment reinstated. Another demands mandatory siestas. One delegate shows up with a cod on a leash and speaks only in riddles. But somehow, over food and song and just the right amount of alcohol, people listen. Your charter becomes a template. You even create committees: justice, food allocation, representation. It's ridiculous. It's glorious. It's working. This is your quirky tidbit. The word pirate comes from the Greek pirates, meaning to attempt or to risk. And isn't that what you're doing here? Risking something radical in the middle of a world that doesn't expect anything from you except violence. Still, not all debates end in harmony. During one late-night session, a shouting match erupts about the appropriate maximum number of cats on board. Someone throws a cat: it's fine. Another claims cats are secretly in charge. The debate is tabled by the cat, as it happens, who curls up on the charter and falls asleep. But more ships begin adopting your structure. Word spreads. Your name becomes a whispered thing in ports, not just feared but respected. You are not the strongest, fastest, or most ruthless, but you are the freest. Of course, freedom's a tricky thing. There are rumors now that the crown is watching more closely. That merchants are sending spies. That some think your election ship is just a stepping stone to something bigger, something dangerous. You sit with lettuce one night, the stars like spilled salt above you. We did this, they whisper. We're still doing it, you reply. They nod. Until someone takes it away. And that, you realize, is the price of it all. Not just the treasure or the threats, but the burden of hope. Of proving, every single day, that this isn't a fluke. That it wasn't a joke. That pirates, of all people, can lead themselves not into chaos, but into something new. You raise a mug. To cats? To charters? To the crew? The ocean answers in silence. The ocean doesn't clap when you do something extraordinary. It just keeps swaying under your feet, salty and endless, like it's seen better revolutions than yours and it's not terribly impressed. But you feel it, deep in your bones, this current you started. This floating experiment stitched together with rope, rum, and radical hope. You're a legend now. Not the fire-breathing, gold-hoarding kind, but something quieter. People come to your ship not just for plunder, but to participate. They bring ideas. They bring debates. One guy brings a trained parrot who casts votes by pecking at portraits. And yes, the parrot swings elections. But not everyone who hears about you is thrilled. Somewhere far across the sea, powerful men squint at their maps and frown. You're a contagion. If one pirate ship can organize, then maybe sailors will question why they're flogged for spilling soup. Maybe merchants will wonder why captains keep all the pay. Maybe someone will write a pamphlet. They always fear the pamphlets. So you start noticing changes. Harbor masters ask more questions. Former allies get cold. Once friendly taverns suddenly serve you from chipped mugs and watch your hands a little too closely. There are whispers about bounties, plans, letters written in code. And then a fleet appears. You spot it at dawn. 5 ships. Bristling with cannons. The kind of fleet you can't talk pudding with. You know this isn't a warning. This is the end. The crew gathers. No panic, just quiet resolve. People you once thought couldn't agree on fish now stand shoulder to shoulder. Stumpy tears up. Lettuce hands you the charter, now smudged and soft from use, and says, whatever happens, they can't take this. There's a vote. One final one. Run. Fight. Surrender. The parrot pecks fight. Loudly. Unanimous. Here's your last historical fact to chew on. Black Sam Bellamy, one of the richest pirates ever, ran his ship like a democracy, called himself the Robin Hood of the sea, and insisted on fair shares for all. His crew called him the Prince of Pirates. And when his ship sank off Cape Cod, people found fragments of coins and stories in the wreckage. But the dream, that stayed afloat in sailors' hearts. Your battle is short and not particularly cinematic. Cannonballs fly. Your mast splinters. Someone yells that the pudding reserve has been hit. You dodge, reload, patch sails with shirts. A goat gets loose. The parrot cusses creatively. And in the end, it's not fire or force that ends it, but surrender from them. Because when they finally board, expecting chaos, they find order. They find ledgers. Voting logs. Rotating chores. They find a ship where dissent isn't punished but scheduled. And somewhere in all this, they hesitate. One of the officers, young, nervous, almost sorry, asks, why? You look at the crew, these sunburned philosophers, and you answer, because nobody ever gave us a map. So we made one. They take you anyway. The trials are strange. Not because of the questions, but because they don't fit you anymore. Are you a pirate? They ask. You shrug. Are you? They don't quite know what to do with a group of self-governing seafarers who discuss income equality while fixing nets. They expect villains and find voters. And here's the fringe tidbit you never expected, a few of them, listen. Some guards ask for copies of your charter. A court scribe asks if she can quote your pudding policy in her diary. Your parrot gets a book deal. They sentence you, sure. But softly. With apologies. Some of you go to different ports. Some to prisons. But you carry it with you, the dream. You scratch it into cell walls. Whisper it to new cellmates. You teach kids to question their captains. And it spreads. One day, far from the gallows, someone tells you about a ship. A ship where the crew votes, where hammocks are assigned by need, not by rank. You smile. Because you know. This is the scholarly debate now, the thing that history books still can't quite agree on. Was it an accident of survival? A blip? Or was it the beginning of something we were never taught to believe in, that democracy could float? You return to the sea eventually. Not to rule. Not to rage. Just to sail. You visit the old places. You see others flying your flag, or something close. You sit at new tables. Listen to younger voices arguing over pudding versus flan. You're older now. Wiser, maybe. Or just tired. But you still cast your vote when it's called for. You still tie the rigging with your own hands. And when someone asks, was it worth it? You say, every storm. Because once, in a world built on taking, you tried giving. Once, you chose to believe in each other. Once, you dared to be free and fair on a sea that respected neither. And that matters. Because the map you made wasn't for treasure. It was for us. The sea quiets now. The sails are loose, catching only the slow rhythm of night. You sit at the edge of the deck, salt in your hair, soft creaks beneath you as the ship breathes its endless lullaby. There are no orders, no cannon fire, no votes to cast tonight, just stars. Infinite, careless stars blinking above you like old friends who never ask too much. The story's over, but it hasn't ended. Not really. You're still out there, somewhere, floating gently on memory. Maybe your ship's long gone, broken into splinters beneath waves and time, but the ideas, those stubborn, glowing pieces of hope, they bob on the surface, waiting for someone else to fish them out and try again. Let your eyes close a little. You've earned that. You've weathered mutinies and monarchs, pudding riots and philosophical brawls. You chose trust over terror, structure over chaos, and it changed more than you'll ever see. And now, far from the noise, you can just be still. Just you and the sea, gently swaying in sleep, wrapped in a breeze that smells like old rope and maybe oranges. You did something rare. Something real. Something kind. So let your dreams take you where no map can go. Let them carry you into softer waters, where every ship sails free, and every hand has a say. Let the stars write your story in a sky that always listens. And if you ever wake again on a deck creaking under moonlight, may your charter be intact, your pudding well stirred, and your crew still voting. End story here. Sweet dreams.